Good afternoon and welcome to the Home Furnishings Association webinar. My name is Shannon Williams and I am the CEO of the Home Furnishings Association. Today we're talking about how AI, 3D visualization, and online platforms are revolutionizing the furniture shopping experience. All of our webinars are recorded and are available on demand at myhfa.org/webinar. If you have any questions that come up during the session, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to as many of those questions as possible and as time allows. And before we get started, I'd love to thank our sponsors, our education thought leadership sponsors, Synchrony, who are supporting and helping retailers understand how to innovate within their business and supporting us through that journey. We are joined today by three panelists. The first is Beck Bessaker, excuse me. He is the CEO of 3D Cloud. He is a pioneer in cloud-based target marketing whose latest venture, 3D Cloud, focuses on 3D content management and applications, including AR, VR, product configurations, and 3D room planners. We have Frances Levison, who is the Associate Vice President of Product at Furniture.com. And she leads product development at Furniture.com, which is a lead digital aggregator for both B2C and B2B, focused on finding furniture easy and building tools and technologies to simplify furniture shopping. And then we have Laura Corey, who is the CEO of Shoptelligence, which is the leading revenue acceleration platform powered by AI and big data, specifically designed for the home furnishings industry. So to go ahead and get us started, just looking at this first topic around AI-powered consumer insights, Laura, can you kick us off and tell us how can AI be used to personalize the shopping experience and drive customer engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on today. Very happy to see everyone. AI holds a lot of promise. And in today's world, when digital is so important and the vast majority of consumers are engaging with retailers before even entering a store, the on-site experience really delivers an opportunity not only to engage the shopper better, but also from a data collection standpoint. So AI is all about detecting patterns in data that are otherwise more difficult to detect. And so what AI allows people to do is really understand what is engaging consumers, understand how they're engaging, and then start to decipher patterns for each individual consumer at scale to really understand what they like, to understand not only the products they like, the attributes they like, but also how they like to engage and how far along, and possibly infer how far along a shopper is in a shopping journey to know exactly how to engage that shopper. So a lot of promise in terms of understanding the individual customer, understanding how they like to be engaged, and then coupling that with digital technologies, being able to automatically act on those signals in real time at scale.
Thank you. Beck, can you elaborate a little bit more? Laura was talking about a little bit of this personalization. Can you elaborate more on how to use AI for the purpose of personalization, but at scale?
I thought her comment around most of the companies that we talk to are trying to solve that problem, which is this a customer that's likely to convert? And in large part, it's kind of almost like an operational cost savings question. Like as a example, we work in the kitchen space as well, and a typical life cycle in a kitchen purchase is almost 14 months. And which I don't think is quite that long for furniture, but the problem there is only about, on average, like 20% of homeowners will actually convert on a purchase. But you still, particularly on that kind of category, like all the measurement, all the store visits, all the pricing, all the consultations, all the rework, you still have to do all that work on the other 8 out of 10 that don't convert. And so a lot of energy we've been seeing going into watching customers use like upper funnel tools, like, hey, can I use style quizzes, and can I use visualizers, and can I use calculators, and can I use planning tools and see patterns in that data that we kind of think of it as like very linear, but when you look at the actual customer data, they come back multiple times, they use multiple tools, they start over. And so it's very hard to say, okay, Francis is 40% likely to convert versus Laura's 20% likely to convert. And so to me, that's maybe the biggest opportunity in AI for retail is figuring out who to spend your resources on, in the sales process.
And if I can add to that real quick, I wholeheartedly agree with Beck. And then if you take it a step further, if they're looking at, specific categories of items or specific attributes, colors, game styles, etc., being able then, when you engage them, to deliver content and deliver merchandising that is relevant to what they're looking for to help them with the discovery is also another huge opportunity. Make it easy for them to buy.
I know that's speaking to Francis right now because that's furniture.com's whole mission. I saw you shaking your head, Francis. Can you share your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. I love what Laura was just getting at. I think there's so much to be done in using customer segments to really build out personalization. It's a really interesting area, and to Beck's earlier point, can really save dollars and operational overhead if you're able to understand those segments, understand like users, and then do things like personalized content for that type of person, personalize the shopping experience for them, and when you elevate certain tools. And I think one of the biggest use cases is thinking about your marketing strategy and how you're targeting different audiences differently based on those segments, which could include, where they are geographically, what actions they've taken on site, etc.
I think one of the questions that I hear from retailers most commonly is really about the hybrid journey. So can we talk a little bit more about, this obviously there's a lot of data to be gleaned from an online experience, but what does this look like and how can AI be used in a hybrid model where you have customers coming into your store and then you also have activity happening on your website?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think thinking of AI as very omni-channel is very important. Beck mentioned that there's usually a long journey of somebody shopping online before they come in store to convert. And I think that's your time to really win the customer and convince them that it's worth it to come in store. And I think if you, leverage AI on your site to understand the user and make sure that your, inventory is resonating, that your marketing is resonating. You could use a recommendation engine. Then you're proving yourself to get them in store where you really have an opportunity to sell them.
I'll add that there's one of the things that particularly I know a lot of people that are attending today work in retailers where they carry a lot of different brands, and a lot of their products are highly, highly customizable. And that's a big differentiator for them versus maybe some of the other players in the market. And the one area where we see kind of a combination of personalization and operational benefits is in natural language product configuration tools. So, you're working with something as complex as an office chair or, or a sofa that comes in, 950 different fabrics, and those natural language configuration tools give you the customer the ability to sort of describe what, instead of like hunting and pecking and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, they can say, I'm looking for something in a light red. Oh no, not quite that dark, or a little lighter, and then they can respond to that, and it gives them the ability to kind of like you're at the eye doctor. It's like this one or that one or this one or that one. And because one of the problems we see with these kinds of highly complex products online is not that the customer can't like find what they like, they just don't know the catalog, and there's just way too many options for them to really actually self-serve. And so as a retailer, what you end up doing is simplifying some of those into like presets that you can sell online. Well, now with AI and natural language configuration tools, you can just let the customer describe it and get them closer, and then allow them to choose between a few. And we actually think the same thing could really help. We talk about omni-channel for the store associate. Think about a new store associate, right? How are they possibly equipped to consult with a customer on such a large set of options? And so I think that's another place where we're hearing a lot of people say, hey, how do I keep all the complexity and the differentiation that comes with my large set of options, but simplify it so they don't have to sort and sift through those, because after 2 or 3 minutes of scrolling, you're going to get tired. So I think that's probably a good, and there are a lot of tools out there that are not that expensive to get into, so it's an easy place to test, and I think that transcends online and in store as well.
If I may add here, I think the omni-channel, there are two ways to look at it. The first one is the consumer knows a retailer as the retailer. They don't distinguish between the retailer on the website and the retailer in store. So being able to provide a similar set of tools in store versus online, but also take into account the importance of the sales associate in the store. They're coming to the store to touch and feel and most likely to ask questions. So enabling sales associates not only with the same tools, so they are as smart, if not smarter than the consumer is one, but also insights from what's happening online to help influence what's happening in store. If you can identify the customer across channels, that's even better, right? Being able to say, I know this customer did XYZ on site. Now arm the sales associate with that so they know and really help the consumer pick up where they left off instead of having to start over and re-say what they want and fill the sales associate in basically on all of the research they've done. And then also making that available to the shopper after they've left the store. So it truly is a seamless experience.
I'm just going to say that we're starting to see these like project specific QR codes. So it's not like, hey, come on my site and register, but it's more like if you saved a configuration, get it in a QR code, and then the customer can screen cap that or email it to themselves and hand it to the sales associate. And like half the work is already done and they can kind of pick it up and finish. So we're seeing a lot of those use cases as well.
Yeah, similar on the consumer side.
Can we talk a little bit about tools and applications around AI? So what are we talking about when you said we can prompt and go from a specific filterable tool of red sofa into this is more of what I'm looking for and coming up with an aggregated result? Through the customer journey, as it aligns both on online and in store with a middle person of a sales associate, what are we talking about for AI applications, AI tools, and AI resources?
Probably the most popular we're seeing in our space are tools like Midjourney. And then we partner with Google with a number of their tools. But honestly, they're all pretty similar. What you're really looking for, is you're trying to find somebody who's taken a generalized AI tool and then gave it a data set to solve a very specific problem, so that it's already trained, so you can pick it up and use it within your enterprise. And so it's pretty easy to find, like if it's like color picking applications, right? Somebody's already trained it on that. All you need to do is submit your data set. It's unlikely that as an independent retailer, like I wouldn't be sitting there thinking about how am I going to use my own data set to train an AI. Like it's going to be extraordinarily expensive, and it's unlikely that you're going to have the people, have the domain expertise to actually do that. But the nice thing is Google and Microsoft, they all have big marketplaces that you can go and search or ask if you're on Google or you're on Azure, you can ask those reps for recommendations in their marketplaces. And that's probably the easiest way to find the right tool.
Laura, I see that you wanted to add to that.
No, I was just going to add to that Beck brings up a really good point. It's expensive to put all of the data resources. It's hard to collect all your data as a retailer. Most retailers don't collect much of the data they need. But what we're starting to see in the industry or just in general, not even just in the home furnishings industry, is the suppliers are taking that on. The vendors are taking on incorporating AI into their tools. And in my opinion, AI is most valuable as applied, right? So for a specific use case. And a lot of the successful vendors, I mean, Apple with their announcement this week, I think is doing it the right way. They're taking AI and incorporating it into solutions that consumers already use. I think that's the winning use case. And it's the easiest to adopt as a retailer also.
If I'm a small furniture store and I'm not using Google, I'm not using AI tools, where do I even get started? So I heard go to your Google rep and talk through tools, but where do I optimize first? Is it on my website? Is it in person? Is it optimizing SKUs and catalog? What are my options and where do I even begin?
I would recommend starting online first, primarily because you're going to get a really good feedback loop there. There's such good data that you can collect very easily and cheaply on your website to understand how is this tool performing? Is it hitting the initial KPIs that I set in place? There's just so much more you can do in analysis after a feature is live to make sure that it's really resonating with your customers. I think a really important part about adding AI to your website is you're probably not going to get it perfectly right the first time. It's really a game of iterating, and having that online data is really, really helpful if you're just getting started to understand the process and build.
How would a retail track the effectiveness? Like what metrics should they be looking at what their most effective return on investment would be for an AI driven tool?
I think it depends a lot, but for a retailer, I would say like, are users converting? Are you increasing sales with these tools? At the end of the day, that's what matters to their business. And I think with AI, there's so many cool tools out there. There's so much you can do, and it's very easy to like get distracted and create AI for AI's sake, I think. So I think always evaluating, going back to the end goals and making sure, is this at the end of the day helping my business and helping me achieve my goals? It's important. When we're building out new AI at furniture.com, we always set a measurement plan first to make sure that we keep ourselves really honest throughout that process and we don't get distracted by this shiny object. We're always thinking about the end business goal.
Yeah. The number one use case right now that most companies are implementing was kind of the lowest hanging fruit, and it's a cost saving customer service benefit. And that's simply taking all your product guides, everything that's on the website, everything that's in a PDF, size, instruction, interoperability, what colors it comes in, not even doing something visually, and just simply putting a search box on a PDP that says, ask me a question about this product. And the idea is that it's super easy to do. There's actually hundreds of these companies that are enabling this. You already have most of the information about your descriptions and sizes and dimensions and so forth. And the real benefit is that it's really good. It's more likely to be right or as right as a customer service representative. It doesn't require a human, and it's a lot less expensive, and it shows, sort of a step towards innovation. But if somebody said, like, what's the easiest thing that I can do? And I don't, that's probably the most prolific use case we're seeing right now.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Laura.
I was going to say on the attribution and measurement front, keep in mind that e-com is still less than 10% of the retailer's business. And so I think it's important for retailers to recognize, independent of AI, just even in digital in general, there's a certain set of leading indicators to sales and conversion, et cetera. And that's on-site engagement, it's return visits, it's the depth to which somebody researches a product, how many product detail pages they view, how much they add to cart, et cetera. The cart's a shopping list at the end of the day in home furnishings for most categories. And so really setting those metrics up to see if engaging with an AI, as Beck just suggested, that's more conversational, is that leading to people moving to adding things to cart a little bit more. All those leading indicators, I would say, are as important, if not more important, than the ultimate outcome of conversion, because again, it's hard to tie on-site activity to in-store behavior where most of the conversions you generate happen. And unless you've got something where you can tie that consumer end to end, it's impossible.
Beck, you mentioned a little bit about that human approach. Can you talk about just the challenges that are existing right now where, retailers can lean really heavily into this digital age, but we're a very relational industry. So can you talk about some of the challenges that may be coming up now and things retailers should be considering about this humanistic approach to AI?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for a lot of these functions, I mean, we are going to lose some of that person-to-person interaction. And the truth is, like, some of these tools are so fast and so good and so accurate that you find yourself, you ever had that feeling like when you're like eating up somebody's time by asking, you don't feel like that. And so you feel kind of like liberated that you can sort of ask this tool as much as you want. You know, you don't have that, it's not going to get tired and so I actually think a lot of the customer service functions are probably the lowest hanging fruit for AI. I don't know how humanistic that is. I think on the like the associate side, to me, I think the biggest benefits are going to be reductions in like training time. You know, the ability to sort of know the product, know the business, get questions answered more quickly, not have to go back and ask somebody else. So to me, the operational benefits of onboarding people more quickly using the same kind of tools are probably like I said, a lot of people are really focusing there.
I think there's a lot of tools too that help the associate on the floor in the selling process. Like one that comes to mind very related to Beck is like a sofa configurator, having that on an iPad in the store where you're really tying the human element with AI. Or, you know, searching the product catalog, even like a virtual design assistant, something like that, that makes the sales associate look really smart and enables them in the selling process more. I think we're going to see more and more of that over the coming years.
I also think on the sales associate front and more humanistic type approach to consumers and shopping. A lot of us focus on the upfront sale. There's a lot to be gained after the sale, right? And using AI models to help sales associates follow up after delivery and suggest a few other things to purchase. Follow up if the delivery service was delayed. You can detect patterns, right? In the AI, identifying kind of exceptions where there may be a customer service issue and somebody didn't see it because they're not seeing all the data, and AI can be trained to do something like that and enable the sales associate to proactively, or a customer service rep to proactively follow up with the consumer to avoid a lost soul, if you will, somebody who never returns.
I'm hearing applications on the floor in configuring designs. I'm hearing applications after the sale for more consistent feedback and touch points with the customer or additional add-on sales. How else could a retailer implement and use AI in the business? What are some other like opportunities that they could pursue to blend AI and human interaction?
I would say one area that is a huge opportunity is more on the merchandising side. So we've got all this data on what's being looked at, what's being sold, what's converting, what isn't. And I don't know how humanistic it is, but ideally you want to have the right inventory to help that consumer find what they want. And so being able to give the merchants tools to make it more user-friendly or make the whole process more data-driven, possibly, to help the merchant really have what the consumer is looking for, ideally earlier, right? So if you can get ahead of it, so there are no supply chain issues, et cetera, delivery time issues. That's another opportunity, I think, to deliver what the customer wants before they know it, almost.
I'll add on there. So the real life examples we're seeing in terms of like the merchandising and advertising and creative teams, like the one is generative AI for 3D models. For right now, the state of the art doesn't really allow you to create AI for like a real life product with real dimensions, because AI has this thing called hallucination, where like it'll take the dimensions and photos of a product that you give it, and it can't help but be a little bit creative. So it'll actually change your product, and that'll be worked on over the next couple of years. But what it can do is, if you're having, like, if you use planning tools, you can use generative AI to create a lot of staging content. And so, like, you talk about plants and books and, decor, which, typically that'll cost you $150 to have a human create that model. And generative AI, you can create the same staging content for about $5. So, and it's quick. And so that's a real life example. Another real life example is a lot of retailers that carry the same brands are getting cross-shopped, because you can now do like the Google image search. And so there's a lot of pretty much free AI services where you can drop your product and then change the background or change the angle. So, when somebody tries to image search it, it can't be cross-shopped. And then you could also, it's pretty inexpensive to create that kind of visual content. So you can also start to do, like Francis was talking about, like A/B testing with that, where you can say, hey, let's show this on a rustic background versus an urban background. And so those tools are really prevalent now, and relatively inexpensive, and can save a lot of time. You don't have to go back to your photo team all the time.
Beck, is that just based off of like the stock photography, or how does that play in with 3D visualizations?
All they're doing, I mean, basically, you've got these companies that are using the entire internet of images to train a model, and I can take my Joybird sofa, drop it in a scene, and say, put it on a New York urban apartment with wood floors and a brick wall, and you're done in, just a few seconds. But the reason is, how do I more fully complete my PDP, and then how do I differentiate it if I carry the same product?
What are your favorite go-to tools that you use to do what you're talking about?
Midjourney is one we definitely use for that. And then I'm trying to think what the other one is. Amazon just released a new tool. I'm sorry, go ahead, Francis.
I was just saying Dolly.
But I mean, if you're not doing that now, you could be up and running and doing that tomorrow.
Will you guys play a game with me? So let's just say we are a $2 million retailer, and we do not do anything with AI. Our business is really brick and mortar. We have kind of a stock website, and we are looking to leverage AI 3D visualization and create a hybrid experience to move from $2 million to $5 million. How and what would be the steps we would take to incorporate AI and actually grow the business?
It's probably not going to be a marketing application, honestly. It's probably going to be a cost savings initiative. It's probably where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Like, if I'm a $2 million retailer, I maybe have one full-time employed graphic designer, right? Or maybe I use an agency that can be expensive, or maybe the turnaround time is too long. I would probably focus on operational efficiencies first. That's probably the real saving you're going to. I don't know that AI and image generation or any of that's going to change the amount of traffic that comes in your store, but it could definitely free up your people more.
I would say it's all about traffic acquisition at that point, and then data capture. So making sure you can capture all of the data on what's happening on your site, et cetera. Building and order data, integrating it with order data. So you can start to do segments, et cetera, and better acquire customers and keep them.
This is an interesting conversation, because I think every retailer I've spoken to in the last year is talking about, I need more, traffic's down, I need more traffic, I want to get sales up. And now we're having a conversation where we're not talking about driving more traffic, we're talking about optimizing business operations and using data. Can we talk a little bit more about that, Laura?
About acquiring traffic?
Yeah, well, I think the conversation has all been around traffic. And I think so much of the conversation around traffic is, where do I spend? How do I spend it? Where do I optimize ads? How do I get better SEO? But now we're talking about utilizing AI to better operationalize the business rather than to drive traffic.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of opportunities to mine your data to understand where there are opportunities to grow within your existing customer base. It's all about customer lifetime value. So detecting, taking something as simple as your order data and trying to distill the pattern of the frequency of purchases, the segments of customers, et cetera. And then to Francis's point earlier, how do you segment them and market to them is one way from an operational standpoint to leverage the data you already have. Second area is just even using basic, Google Analytics to understand the path to purchase and then understand where people are getting stuck and looking for point solutions that are, free in some cases or, low cost to specifically fix that particular area. And then somehow if you're able to tie who's coming into store from who was online, to really understand what is driving traffic into the store. What AI allows you to do is detect those patterns and then really focus in, maybe not using AI, to take action on them.
It's such an interesting conversation because our last webinar, we were talking about how do you take ad spend and figure out which channel. But what I'm hearing you say is before you even get there, look at the data, look at the customer segments, optimize that, and then do that. And that's not what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And, there are ways you can also go find consumers that are in market. Once you know kind of what you're looking for, who your ideal customer is, you can go find more, right? And spend in that way. And so really having a good, solid understanding of your own business, and your business may look totally different than the retailer down the street, even though you're the same size, you're selling the same types of products, but the businesses could be very different based on your experience. So knowing your business and what kinds of customers you resonate with and how they operate, the ones that convert, the ones that don't, the ones that come back, the ones that don't is I think a great place to start for proactively strategically growing your business.
I know this is one of your favorite topics is customer lifetime value. Can you speak a little bit more of that and how AI plays into that?
Yes. Customer lifetime value is all about driving customer lifetime value is all about trying to figure out when the customer is going to buy again, what they're likely to buy, and then getting in front of them with an appealing message and merchandising, giving them the reason to come back. It costs 5 times more to acquire than it does to retain. That stat's been out there forever. And so customer using, we're talking about, I mentioned earlier, personalized merchandising, understanding that, 2 years ago, the customer bought a bedroom. Don't go merchandise bedroom stuff for them. Understand what the customer life cycle patterns are. They move from bedroom to dining room. They move from bedroom to, to living room, whatever the case is. Maybe they're, they have children, et cetera. Understanding that, aggregating that customer profile and detecting what that pattern is to figure out what to merchandise to them. This again, whether you do it at the segment level or at the personalized level, AI is something that we do in that particular space to really help personalize that merchandising and marketing to get that customer to come back. And it is, it takes your data, takes, very little elbow grease, I would say, working with the right vendor or internally to identify those consumers to reach out to. And the message becomes very obvious once you're looking at the data.
Beck, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are about AI in the furniture industry right now?
You could probably use it in the same sentence as at one time we were talking about AR and VR and metaverse and AI. I mean, they all kind of go through these hype cycles, and I mean, there are definitely some exciting things, but like I was saying before, I mean, there are some really beneficial opportunities out there, but they're not going to probably be like some whiz bang consumer, like all of a sudden this different way we interact with, the website, or a different way we interact with the store. It's much more likely to be something very simple and tangible and operational and cost saving. So I'd say there's a lot of fear and uncertainty of like, well, what is this what does this mean for me? And is it going to change the consumer experience? And are they going to, and I, you know, I think we're still in that kind of little bit of a hype cycle to get too worried about it. I would be looking for very tangible, short-term, low-cost ways to save money, especially as, you know, the market's soft right now.
I think that's a really astute point. I was watching a video not just last week about IKEA hiring salespeople for their metaverse virtual showroom. Can you talk, and that's not what we're talking about today, is this entirely enhanced, unique, different experience. Can you talk about, now that we're saying AR and VR, can you talk about 3D visualization and the impact that that's having on the furniture industry?
Yeah, so so we've been doing this for almost 13 years now. I think we did the very first AR app. I think we did one of the very first 3D sectional configurators, one of the first product room planners that actually had real live product in it that you can buy, not just like a staging planner, right? And so I'm happy to say that a lot of that space has worked its way through the hype curve, and it's kind of come out on the other side, and it's become very specific. So for instance, like AR didn't differentiate one retailer versus another, where all of a sudden all the consumers are like, oh, I'm only going to shop here because they have this like experience, right? And what we have learned is it's not really a one size fits all kind of tool. What like AR specifically is basically a proxy for a tape measure. Like even the quality of the asset doesn't need to be picture perfect. It needs to be the right size. And so it's like dining room sets, bedroom furniture, sectionals and sofas. Those are 90% of the use cases. Like you would never I would never recommend anybody do AR for like mirrors and decor and stuff like that. So that's one. So, and we've learned that kind of over the years. So it is a nice tool. Consumers definitely like it. You're 2 or 3 times more likely to buy the product if you use it, but it's not a, you know, panacea for all products. It's really about measurement and fit and just sort of confidence. On the, Francis was talking about sectional configurators. And so the cool thing about sectional configurators in 3D is a lot of retailers were limited to selling presets online, you know, like 3-piece, 5-piece, 7-piece. And so now with 3D and the configuration tools, a customer can like build their own, and it's pretty easy to, you know, configure and build and drop it right into the cart. And so those actually, they do really well. They get like a 30% add to cart rate. Now, of course, like Laura said, it's still your shopping list, but in the average conversion out of the cart is something like 0.5%. But there was definitely like this latent demand where consumers are like, I want to configure for my space, and they're becoming really popular. And then you're talking about in-store, then we're finding that store associates didn't like to do special orders because sometimes they were complicated or they took a long time. And so that same tool makes it easy for that store associate to do a special order. And then if you tie that together, the customer can start the project, bring it in and say, here's what I built. We have a different orange that you might be interested in. So I think we're like the planners and configurators and AR, they're all becoming these kind of utilities that are just making it faster and easier for people to get the same result, and giving it to people who maybe are not schooled in the product, who now have a chance to do it themselves, where before they'd have to go in and sit with somebody to do a special order. So very simple, not the super sexiest thing in the world, but we're moving into this functional stage of 3D. Oh, just one other thing to add. One cool thing is 3D is just kind of every year getting a little better. The live 3D model, it's like looking more and more like real, so you don't have to render it into a photo. And so we've had a couple of retailers who just said 3D is our PDP now. They're usually more like in the office space where it's like Miller Knoll and those kind of guys, but we're not that far away to where you won't be able to tell the difference. And that way you won't have to manage all these photos because you'll just use the one asset. And so that's the other big trend we're seeing. It's probably a couple years away, but getting there soon.
Francis, what are you guys seeing at furniture.com? Obviously, the tools that Beck is talking about, we've seen some of the other large marketplaces come to market a little bit faster. How are you seeing that impact at furniture.com around implementing 3D visualization and AR and AI? And how is it impacting sales conversion, either in store or online?
Yeah, you mean directly with 3D or just in general with AI tools?
In general, well, if you could actually speak to both.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think the 3D space is really interesting. And I mean, Beck is so much better equipped to speak to this than me, but anecdotally, the retailers we've talked to, we've heard that it, has increased conversions, has increased people moving in store. It's not somewhere that we've spent a lot of time on yet at furniture.com. We're really focused right now on the earlier side of the journey. So furniture.com is all about traffic acquisition. So we're trying to drive a net new shopper onto furniture.com, educate them on our partners' products, and then ultimately move them off to our retailer site. And there's a lot of AI that we're using within that to help educate the customer. Like one example is within search. We just built a new search tool where a user, it's actually similar to what Beck was describing earlier, where a user can search anything that they imagine. They can search a really detailed product, and we render a 3D image and then match that to our product catalog and can help somebody very easily find a specific product. And the cool piece about it is we know a lot of times furniture data is not perfect. Like every attribute doesn't exist tied to the product. And this makes that not matter. Like if you don't have tufted back as an attribute for a product, it doesn't matter. This tool can still figure it out. And then like another really key piece for us has been in merchandising. For us, we deal with so many different retailers and everybody has very disparate data. And so our job, I think, is as an aggregator is to make that look very cohesive and help our retailers really boost their product detail quality so that we, get more traffic, get more people to our retailers. And a lot of the ways that we're doing that is through AI. So we're thinking about, image tagging to get more depth of detail, and lots of ways of just making sure that everything's at parity, which is a big challenge for us.
I feel like between the three of you guys kind of reflect the whole shopper's journey. So Francis, you guys are bringing customers in through the front end, giving them over to a retailer website. Beck, can you speak to how 3D Cloud is optimizing that customer experience using that technology? And then I know Laura, yours is about keeping them on the site and retargeting. Can you speak more to how 3D Cloud does that as a piece of that shopper journey?
Yeah, we tend to focus on high consideration, highly configurable products where you have to go through some amount of work to figure out like what you want to buy. That's kind of like our bread and butter. If you're like a retailer that sells a product that only comes in one or two variants, like that can be solved through kind of traditional imagery. Whereas like 3D just gives you the ability to show high levels of variation at relatively low cost. And so that's kind of where we, focus our energy is working with the complex, high consideration, typically higher price point type products.
And then Laura, can you speak to that with Shoptelligence's journey? Because I know a lot of yours is about keeping them on the website longer and then continuing to keep that customer after purchase.
Yeah, exactly. So our platform traditionally has been focused on getting the shopper once they are on site to discover other similar products to help them find the first right product, and then coordinating items to help them complete the room, and then helping them really discover multiple products on a retailer's website to make sure it's worth their while. And so that is one area that we've been heavily focused on. We've since expanded to helping identify who that shopper is, providing that information to the retailer sales associate, and then helping the sales associate in store. And then finally closing the loop to do loyalty-based marketing to help the shopper come back, help the shopper remember the retailer, understand when the shopper should come back to get them back, And so really closing that loop and then taking that insight to also do on the outbound side, net new customer acquisition. And so it's really a full end-to-end acquisition through retention platform that unifies the view of the customer so you can continuously personalize that interaction no matter the channel.
Can you talk a little bit about how some real world examples that you may have encountered with retailers who have successfully used AI and maybe what results they're seeing from it?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI is a broad space, and we've been in this space since we started. And so, one area, and Francis was talking a little bit about it, which is, taking a retailer's messy data, no offense, but we all know data is not clean. If it is, it's not actually real. And so taking that data to really understand what the products are, using AI to enrich the data about that particular product, and then be able to derive similar items as well as coordinating items. That's one area that we've been doing for years. And the typical success factor when we look at it, shoppers tend to spend 6 times longer on the retailer's website, making it more likely that they're building confidence to go visit the store. When they do choose to purchase online, they're buying on average 35% more, which is good. So we're seeing good ticket size. But the thing that is most interesting is when you look at the on-site engagement, those that specifically say I'm interested in a product, getting those leads in store and closing those leads in store is at least double. It's mid double-digit conversion rates. And so that shows the value of really knowing the consumer and being able to assist them once they get into the store. And then with loyalty marketing, we're seeing 3 to 4-fold increases in response rates by putting the right product in front of the right consumer. So it's, as I was saying earlier, it's important that you understand the right measurement for each of the things that you're doing, so you make that correct measurement to assess the value. And so you heard, 4 or 5 different KPIs there, because it's what is relevant to where the shopper is in the journey and what the retailer is trying to accomplish.
Ben, I saw you shaking your head. Can you speak to somebody that's...
I was just thinking about, have you guys seen this, it's kind of off topic, but have you seen this site called dupe.com?
Yes.
I'm obsessed with it. It's fascinating, but it's in the furniture space. And what they do is allow you to take a URL from a product that you like, drop it into a search box, and then it uses AI to show you everything that was sort of like a knockoff of that original product and like a bunch of varying different prices. And it's, I mean, the volume is just going through the roof. Like it's the new starting point for shopping for furniture for particularly like people right out of college. And like my sons used it for their apartments, and it's just an interesting, like, what's that say about, so there's a real AI use case. It's the first one I've seen that's direct to consumer, and it's in the home space, and it's taken off like a rocket. But the overarching story is, I want something that looks expensive, but I'm willing to take something cheap and kind of throw away. And so like, what does that mean about where we are in the market right now? And if Dupe becomes the AI tool where all people start, right, or to look for alternatives, like what does that mean? So I've been watching those guys pretty closely.
On that note, where do you think this is heading? Obviously, it will change the customer journey. What other predictions do you have about the future of AI within the furniture industry space?
Well, if you look at like the idea of whether it's furniture.com or whether it's like this Dupe stuff, that like the idea that AI can consolidate everybody's PIM into one tool, allow a customer to ask about it, like it does lean towards like, hey, there's going to be these Travelocity, or unified models that are coming. And, we kind of went through that cycle with furniture once before, and we've said, because of the regional nature of furniture, it's a market that's continued to survive and do well. But, we're going to, definitely the amount of data you can process through now makes these kinds of tools possible. So I think that's probably a pretty safe prediction that you'll see more of them.
biggest change that I've seen is just a lot of conversation around more marketplace activity. So let's just say that comes to light. How does a retailer even begin to consider where to sell, or does this become the advertising issue of the future? Is where do I optimize my target customer? Do you see that and anticipate that being an issue?
I think the retailers we sort of see doing well are kind of staying out of those and trying to differentiate independently, trying to make sure they have a different experience and different product. And I think to get into kind of a marketplace play, you'd have to be a pretty large, kind of national brand that's already shipping nationally. I'm not sure that that's probably a place where, you're talking about marketplaces where you can buy things like coffee makers for the home, right? Because people are already at your website, they might purchase that. We really haven't, I know, it looks like Ashley's had, some success there. And we've seen Home Depot and Lowe's kind of go into the furniture space, but those are like giant brands, right? With lots of traffic.
Yeah, I think if I were a small retailer evaluating which marketplaces to go to, Beck's earlier point is excellent. Furniture is still regional. I would think about like which marketplaces do allow regionality and do target customers at a regional level. And I think the point too, a lot of marketplaces really think about the vendor. They're partnering with the manufacturer. So thinking about like who's going to keep you in the game, who's going to actually partner with the retailer, are two important things I would consider.
I think it's going to become a marketing optimization challenge potentially, not that it's not solvable, but you're going to start to see retailers getting pressured to splinter their marketing spend because, there are marketplaces coming. They don't want to move. They don't want to lose out on that traffic. There's independent marketing. So I think the application of AI on marketing optimization is, that's a 7 to 10% of a retailer spend. It's substantial. And so it makes sense to optimize there. And it's an opportunity, but you've got to have the data to enable that. I think marketplaces, if there is a proliferation of them, will force that issue or at least add pressure there.
What anticipated challenges do you see? I think there's been a long conversation around will AI replace people, and I think it's fair to say that there's some possibility of enhancement to role. But what issues do you anticipate with staff adoption of AI, and how do we support employees, staff in adopting, using, and really leveraging the AI and customization experience?
I have a good answer for you. It's probably going to be just like all of our businesses. So we have like 110 employees, and I'm pretty sure all 110 were adopting AI before we were. Like they're finding tools and making their job easier, pretty quick, especially if you're like working in like an office environment. So so we actually, you ever heard that it's like you build a college campus, then the next thing you do, you don't build the sidewalks until you find out where everybody's like all the walking patterns are. And I think you can use the same analogy for kind of like what technology you adopt. So the first thing we did is actually survey our employees and say, what are you using? We found out half of them were on Canva, which is like a graphics generation. They were all started creating their own assets. We have a bunch of developers who are using several different coding tools. And so that was actually how we found probably a couple of hundred different use cases, and we narrowed down to say, hey, this one is actually something that the company can adopt. Let's investigate further. So I don't think it has to be like, you don't have to be like this like genius person that looks out into the marketplace and sort of, tries to imagine what the right thing is. Like ask your people, they're probably already starting to use different tools.
I'm going to take the opposite position here on this one because change is difficult. Humans don't change easily. And when there's a threat, it makes it even more difficult to change. And so I think we will be successful in adopting AI in this industry if we can show applications that help the sales associates, the other workers that are that are critical to a retailer surviving and growing. And so I think it's going to be, we're in the hype cycle right now. So people are using it as consumers, but there's a little bit of fear, I think, in terms of what the implication at work will be. And so if we can find a way to overcome that fear, which I think for the average associate or merchant is probably there. If we can overcome that, I think change will happen and people will adopt it, but it's got to be a really tangible use case that clearly benefits them and doesn't threaten them. And I think back the examples you brought up for your employees, you know, they already found it. I think in a traditional retailer's environment, that's probably not the majority of the employees.
So we use AI for automated kitchen design now. We're not there on furniture yet, but we've been doing it for a couple of years in kitchen. And we work with this retailer in the UK. They have about 2,000 designers. And when we introduced we call magic rooms, the ability, you just sort of pick a picture and it automatically builds your kitchen based on your floor plan and you can like go through them. There was definitely, you know, like oh shit, like, is this going to replace my job? But when they realized that it helped them get through a consultation with a customer much more quickly, I mean, there was still the fine work of being a designer and a professional that needed to be done on top of that, but allowed you to go through like 10 options very quickly and get to a budget and a design that could take a month of back and forth. And so there was that initial sort of reticence, but once they started using it as kind of like a superpower tool, then they found their jobs faster and easier. And the truth is you are going to have those groups of folks who like, you're just, you know, going to dig in and not adopt. And you're going to have the ones who are first movers and you sort of let the first movers sort of win over the rest of the group and not try to win over everybody. But I mean, they've reduced their design time by 85% by using that tool. And they get through consultations a lot faster and they can serve more customers. So they definitely had an impact.
Let me throw one last question at you before we end today's webinar. What advice would you give a furniture retailer who's hesitant to leverage AI and incorporate it into their business?
I can start. I think it's inevitable. I think everyone will start to leverage AI as it becomes cheaper and more tangible. There's so many out-of-the-box tools there now that makes it easier and easier. I think the thing often people overlook is how much data it takes to create AI. So I think a really good starting point is like make sure your product data is in shape, make sure your images are there, make sure that you're tracking behavior on your website. Like don't forget those fundamentals that you can put in place now that'll really set you up for the future and adding more like AI type tools to your site.
I would say if you're afraid of it, find somebody on your team that is curious and have them go search for solutions and find ones that are kind of low risk, relatively easy to implement and get started by winning first. And then that will create more momentum behind it. But there are so many use cases. And, you know, I agree with Francis, you've got to collect your data. First party data is everything right now. And if you're not collecting it, you're missing out because you can't recreate it.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys summed it up pretty well, actually.
Well, I really would like to just end today by just thanking each of our panelists, Beck, Francis, Laura. We really appreciate 3D Cloud, Furniture.com, and Shoptelligence, understanding of the AI and giving understanding AI, 3D visualization, how to blend the human interaction of this new technology front that we're all navigating, and appreciate your insight and knowledge as retailers are working through that journey. I'd like to thank everyone else that is watching for attending. Just a reminder, you can go to rewatch this webinar at myhfa.org/webinars. Please keep on the lookout for our next webinar in 2 weeks. And I hope everyone has great sales. And thank you so much for coming in today. And once again, thank you to our sponsors, Synchrony, for supporting the Home Furnishings Association and all their furniture retails in really approaching innovation. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.